Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for One Piece Chapter 990. And okay, so before we even get into the details about the chapter itself, let's take a moment to acknowledge just that fact alone, that we're on chapter 990 of One Piece, 10 chapters away from the 1000 mark. And just knowing that really makes me ponder and wonder out loud that among all the craziness we've experienced in the arc so far, just what the actual fuck does Oda have planned for that for basically that pretty much looming chapter, which like the thing is, more often than not, like when a series reaches pretty much over 1,000 chapters, that 1,000th chapter, chapter 1,000 is usually used as a significant turning point in a manga series. And knowing Oda, he's been building up to this point where he's been building up to this point so much where he can safely unleash whatever hellish insanity he's planned. And generally speaking, like, let's be real here, there's no way in hell the man hasn't deliberately paced this story in such a way where he wouldn't have some big reveal or world-changing event happen in chapter 1,000. It's just not possible. He's proven himself incapable of not holding back in that regard. And it's which is, I guess, partially the reason why we love him, obviously, but it's truly like it's also probably a reason why, like, it's also probably a good reason as to why I'm really thinking that, like, and like it's also probably a reason why, like, a lot of what we've it really feels like a lot of what we've seen, while epic and grand and whatnot, it all feels like just kind of set up. Like, everything we've gotten so far just feels like set up for pretty much whatever the hell Oda has planned for chapter 1,000. Like, everything in this arc, it's everything that we've seen in this arc is all building and building, and it's all going to come to a head in chapter 1,000. That's kind of what I'm seeing. Like, any epic moment, anything we've seen thus far, it's all coming to a head in chapter 1,000 in some form or another. Like, chapter 1,000 is definitely where the craziness is going to be, for sure. Like that's pretty much where Oda's going to unleash hell on earth. Let's put it that way. Um, Now, getting into the actual chapter, though, we start by seeing the samurai and minks like their continued battle against Kaido and his forces, and it's another example of my continued, like, I guess, like, it's a little bit of frustration, but it's like the kind of frustration like, damn you, Oda. uh, like it's my frustration that is a thing where I'm constantly, where moments like what we see in the beginning of this chapter is where I'm constantly frustrated at Oda's constantly cock teasing us, because we see a major setup for a rematch between Jack and Nekomamushi and Inuarashi, and just based off the setup, just the setup alone of seeing these three basically come to a head, it got me hyped, because this is something that's been built up ever since Zoe. But before even turning the page, I managed to taper down my hype and said to myself, Oda's gonna cut away next page, isn't he? Which, lo and behold, that's exactly what he did. Which I get that Oda's a very narrative-driven person, and he doesn't want to spend too much time on a fight until he knows he's ready. But sometimes if you just want him to focus on a fight I really want to see, and yeah, the Nekomamushi fight, the Nekomamushi Inuarashi versus Jack fight, that's been a rematch that's kind of been in my head for so long, and I've wanted to see. So, like, just the fact that he kind of cock teased us with that fight, it's like, damn you, Oda, I wanted to see more. Like, seriously, Oda, I love you. I love your narratives. I love the way you craft the story. But damn it, Oda, I want to see that fight. Now, granted, the chapter in itself still had a lot of focus on the battles going on inside Onigashima, with the main focal point one being the battle of everyone versus the numbers. And one thing in particular I really liked about this fight is how, even though there's a lot of basic basic and logical maneuvers when fighting giants that were utilized in this fight. I still like how, in some form or another, it brought back all the previous experience we've had in the series in regards to giants, as it felt like there were numerous callbacks to Little Garden, Thriller Bark, and even a little bit of Enies Lobby. Like, and anytime we've dealt with giants in the series, this felt like a culmination of that. But obviously, with Thriller Bark being the more prominent one, as a lot of the build up on the Straw Hats end of this fight, all culminated in Luffy basically attacking the number giant with the club, with basically with the very similar jaw breaking punch he used on Oars, which in some ways also makes me, which honestly, just from seeing Luffy in his Gear 4 form, and him punching the giant in the jaw like he did with Oars, it almost makes me wonder if Nightmare Luffy was basically sort of Oda's way of teasing us with the future of Gear 4. Like, it, looking back on Gear 4 right now, that there is a lot about Gear 4 is reminiscent of, that does feel in some ways reminiscent of Luffy's Nightmare Luffy form. So yeah, I'm only kind of realizing now that I wonder if that's kind of one of the things that Oda was foreshadowing with that particular with Nightmare Luffy, that Gear 4 was eventually going to be a thing. Um, with that said, obviously this chapter is never just brainless fighting. That there's always some underlying plot, obviously, with it. And one of the major plot developments we get in the chapter is that Drake's been more or less compromised. And one of the more obvious takeaways that stuck out from this is that even though he didn't reveal who he was, the whole situation in itself happened too soon before he and Sword were even fully prepared in order to make their move, which inevitably led him to asking for Luffy's help at the end of the chapter. And one thing I love about that in particular is that it works on two different levels. Obviously, the first is he acted on it purely by remembering Koby's advice, but in doing so, it also creates a scenario where he can still keep his role as a spy covered up, as it's presented in a situation where it's basically just two pirates, like teaming up out of convenience, and in a situation like this, there's nothing really all that out of the ordinary for pirates to team up in order to survive, and allowing him to, which is also going to allow Drake to buy more time until Sword's operation actually finally goes into play. Which, going off that little bit as well, it in itself also, what we get with Drake and him talking about how everything happened too soon, how his cover got exposed too soon. I like how it all this gets me more excited, because now, well, not only do we know for sure that Oda is laying the groundwork for a reunion between Koby and Luffy, very much in the near future now, but it's happening, that there's no getting around it. But on top of that, there's so much about this operation in itself with Sword that tells me everything that's going on right now is in one way or another all going to everything is going to converge on Sword. Like everything, even though there's a lot that's really just kind of been, even though there's a lot that's already converged on itself, even though this whole situation has kind of converged on itself already with so many groups already going at each other. When you throw Sword into the mix, it's going to converge in a way that's going to create a situation where almost every big player from every faction that's gathered here on Wano is all going to be gunning for Kaido, and there's generally a lot with this setup in itself that actually that actually feels like it's even building upon what we'll more than likely be seeing in Chapter 1000. Like everything that happened in this chapter right now feels like in one way or another, it's all going to be tying back to what it's already everything is going to be tying back to chapter 1000. Like, and I think it's like this chapter already is giving me vibes that, to put it another way, this chapter is already giving me vibes that what we're that every single that we're going to see a lot of big players being reintroduced into this arc in these past 10 chapters now, and it's all going to be building up to basically chapter 1000, where everything is going to come to come to a blow. So yeah, just a very exciting chapter, and I'm really curious to I'm really curious to see how everything's gonna play out from here now. So with that said, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Dead Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.